Hello there, I'm John Lindsay with Tom Price of Our Town, Our City Institute, and we're going to be doing in this recording fact-checking. It's something that's often used during election campaigns, and they determine what is right and what is perhaps not quite correct. And we're looking specifically at the cost of a new arena for downtown Sudbury. And Tom, there's some questions there. People are not really sure how much it's going to cost. Some say, oh, no problem. We can get that for like maybe 150 million. And other people are saying, no, it's going to cost $500 million. So looking at it, you've analyzed this in great detail. There's a number of different factors involved. Maybe we should go over a few of them now. And we're going to use our board here for you to use your magic marker and give us some fact checking.
Okay, no problem at all. As John has intimated, OTOCI has published what we believe to be a more accurate cost for the event center. That more accurate cost is in the range of $500 million, or 500 million if you can't wrap your head around billion. The 500 million is not unfounded. It is contained in the reports from the city. It's just that it has not been exposed to the public. And it probably won't until after the fact. So what we did is we went through the report and we ferreted out all of the costs that should be associated with that event center. And I'll start off by saying what the direct costs are in the consultant's report. And that is 106 million, and all these are in millions. Okay, so that's a pretty easy number, and that's for 170,000 square feet of center area. However, there's a footnote in their report that says that the area is only accurate to plus or minus 20%. So if you're going to build this, you better take into account that 20%. 20% more area at the same cost per square foot as the direct brings out another 21 million. Okay? Then they say there's a structural and soils premium in the consultant's report of 25%. Well, that 25%, that gets you out of the ground, and I'm not sure what the structural portion is, but the 25% gets you out of the ground for sure, and that is 32 million. So let me add in the titles for those. This is extra area.
Where did that extra area come from, Tom?
The extra area is required to make it equivalent to the KED.
Oh, right, that's 5,800 seat capacity.
Yes, and that's what we're talking about for the event center. Okay. Then there's environmental, SEEP requirements. Oh, I'm sorry. The 32 million is for soils premium.
Is that we're building it where it's anticipated around the area close to the Sudbury Theatre Center?
Yes.
In the area that's been cleared?
Yes. And then there's the environmental SEEP requirements, which the consultant stated would be another $8 million. So we'll add environmental in here.
Are these estimates or definite figures?
These are numbers from their report. And you can make your own assessment whether you think their estimates are real. So that brings us to 110, 1, 6 or 11, and 1 or 12. That can't be right. 20, 30.
So we're adding this up now. The direct cost is originally predicted, the extra, and then the soils premium,
Oh,
and
I'm
the
sorry.
environmental that we put on as well then too, right? So
I'm sorry, that should be 106 million.
yeah, right.
There.
You almost made it more economical. But you're adding it all together now with that 106, which was the cost without the extra premium being put on there.
So that brings us to a total direct cost of 167 million.
Right.
Okay. However, to that, you have to add a Sudbury premium.
This is the result of doing the work in Sudbury?
Yes. And that adds another 23 million. That is a standard across the construction industry. And it's well recognized to the point that a national consultant, Altus, in Vancouver surveyed 900 groups and over 55,000 projects. And they found that the cost in Sudbury was 15% higher than in the GTA.
Mm-hmm.
So that 106 is a GTA number, and the consultant here, the BBB, talk about it, but it somehow never got entered. So that 23 million has to be added to that. So that adds up now
So we're looking at a new total there.
direct costs of 190 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you may well think that, oh, well, the 200 million is good.
Yep.
Not quite. That's just the direct costs. So to that, you have to add in contingencies. And in their report, they talk about contingencies at 20%.
Now this, you're talking about a report. What is this report?
This is the consultant's report by BBB.
Mm-hmm.
Brisbane, Brooks, and Bainan.
Right.
And their representative was in the meeting when this was all discussed, okay? So there is the direct cost of 20%, which is another 38 million. And according to a Class D estimate, which is what they claimed, you have to take into account what do you do with the existing arena, because something has to be done with it. You're either going to tear it down or you're going to repurpose it, but something has to be done. So we took the cheapest option that they talk about in their report of $5.5 million
To tear down the present arena.
to demolish the existing arena.
That space could conceivably use for parking, however, is that correct?
Yep.
But it wouldn't provide all the parking needed, though, I would believe.
Now, to do all of that, there's what they call soft costs, which have to be added.
Mm-hmm.
Soft costs are things like engineering, architects' fees, preliminary work, and all that. So we add in what they allowed, and they allowed 25% for soft costs. That includes furniture, seating, and those things, okay? And that comes to 59 million.
Would that include the architect's fees and engineering, no?
It should, yes. So that brings us to 293, let's see, 38 and 5, or 8 and 5 is 13, 2, let's see, 3, 5 and 3 are 8, 9 is 2.
These are all big figures.
Yes. That should be 9, and that should be 2. So now we're up to 293 million, just shy of 300 million, okay? Mm-hmm. But they, in stating that this was a Class D estimate, they tied us into an industry standard for Class D estimates that says that they are only accurate to plus or minus 30%. Well, if you're looking at the possible costs of this project, you better be looking at the high and the low, but the high you have to take into account. So you have to add another 30% for Class D.
Yeah, there are other classes I understand, but the Class D is probably the one that we're looking at here.
Okay, so that brings us to $381 million. However, we also have interest to pay on the loans. They borrowed $90 million on a bullet debenture. The interest on that is $65 million.
Now this is the same if you're mortgaging your house or you borrow the money, so you actually have to pay back everything you borrow. And this is what we're looking at here. This particular type of financing that was done was not a strict, like a mortgage. It was a different type of financing where you have to save your money and pay it back at the end of the period of time, with your interest, of course, figured in as well. And that's what it looks like. Is that right, Tom?
Yep.
The figures you're using there. And so there's a lot of figures there, and by the time you add them all up, for us tax-paying citizens, for our new arena, you could be looking at, by the time you figure all of these expenses in, as Tom has laid it out here on our flip chart, and he's doing the calculations here for us, and we're looking at something that seems to be sort of a mind-watering total of, wow, it could be, so the total could be upwards of $581 million.
Now, what isn't included in that is the collection of that money and taxes, because every penny of that is a tax. To collect those taxes, an article in the National Post with comments from the Canada Revenue Agency says that it takes roughly 10% of your project to collect, or of your amount of money you're going to spend. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. It takes 10% of the tax money you collect to pay for the collection.
That's right.
So this is only 90% of the amount of taxes that have to be collected. So you have to add another $60 million to that, which now you're up to $641 million for that event center. Mm-hmm. Using their numbers. We haven't taken any numbers on our own.
Mm-hmm. These are rather eye-watering figures as we're fact-checking here, but we have some other concerns, and that's why have no architectural firms in Sudbury want to be involved in the construction or the design of our new arena. Now, we talked about the design of the arena because that's what architects do. Then there's engineering as well involved, and then there's the actual construction.
Yep.
And when you sort of follow the money, there's always that feeling that who's going to do the construction? And is it going to be an out-of-town firm, or is it going to be a local firm? And there's always that speculation with respect to the plus and minus cost as well, too. How often does a large project, and you've been involved with many across the country, around the world, how many actually come in under estimate?
Almost zero.
Oh. So really, yeah.
90%, 99% of projects overrun. It's that simple. And we have the surveys and that to demonstrate that. They can argue all they want about good management and everything else, but these large projects, 99% of them overrun their initial budget, and by significant amounts.
Mm-hmm. One thing we didn't deal with, we sort of alluded to it there, and that's with respect to the parking, because that was supposed to be included in a Class D estimate as well. Is that correct?
Yes, according to a Class D estimate definition, parking is definitely required, and we haven't included that here.
Yeah, I think that you know, I'm safe here because it says suspected scam. So, you know, using that term scam, we're not using that term ourselves, but some others have sort of alluded to the fact that some of these expenses may be in the area of being sort of, not, if not scammy, at least sort of suspicious. Is that correct?
Well, one has to wonder why these costs weren't put before the general public. Why did they sell it as a $200 million project? When, as you can see, it's very easy from their numbers to come to over $500 million, and that doesn't include cost of collecting the taxes, the costs of almost the environmental, everything environmental. Well, they put in $8 million. I don't know what you would do for $8 million.
I just want to suggest something else here now. Even if you cut that in half, you know, like $250 million, we've already borrowed a certain amount of money, and there's indication that we'd be borrowing another $135 million. How does that figure in? That comes to about $225 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, that raises a real question, because why would you borrow $225 million for a $200 million project?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you authorize that extra $25 million before you even know an accurate cost? Like, this is irresponsible. This is not, approving this is not doing the fiduciary duty that we expect from our elected members. To go ahead and approve an extra $25 million based on nothing.
It does raise some very, I think, questions that should be answered, and I feel personally that it's our responsibility of our counselors to ask these questions of those who are coming up with the figures, the borrowing, the numbers, the location, the future use, the need for the number of seats that they're actually anticipating, and the reasons why to demolish our present arena, which seems to be serving very well. As a matter of fact, some of the NHL hockey players who were in town just a few days ago were commenting on the arena, what it was a great experience to be in a real hockey arena.
Yes.
So now we're just old folks, of course, you know, we admit that, so it's not going to matter a whole lot to us. But nevertheless, this type of debt on citizens going forward into the future, can this be done with tax increases like they're already trying to achieve? You have to add more on, do you not?
Yes. And, you know, John talked about the responsibility of different people, but knowing this, we have a responsibility to make you, the taxpayers of Greater Sudbury, aware of what is actually in those reports. And the reports, every number here came from those reports. We didn't make up anything. So the new debt, $135 million. The 95, that's where I made a mistake, because that's not 65.
Oh, we're adding a little more.
Oh, yes, it is. The
Oh, it
bullet
is,
debenture,
okay.
the interest on the bullet
Okay.
debenture is $65 million. The Class D estimate, well, if you don't take a look at your, maybe I should explain that a bit. In evaluating any major project in private industry, you look at the window of possibilities, okay? What is the worst case? What is the best case? And if you're trying to sell management, they need to know the worst case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the worst case. Well, plus some more.
Yeah.
So
citizens should know this.
citizens should be aware of this, that we could be into the $600 million range
Mm-hmm.
for a hockey rink that we can hold parties in.
Well, I think that, you know, what we've done here, and we are willing and we hope able to discuss this with anyone who's interested, and in particular with our mayor and with our elected representatives. We're open for future discussions on this, and being transparent and fact checking as we have. So some final comments, Tom, to wrap up our episode here?
Well, I think it's important to recognize at this stage the fact that we have not been given accurate information. Why is something that would have to be assessed. What is true and what isn't true? Is the 200 million actually true? Now, what we found for the KED was that the 200 million was for just the rink event center, built on solid bedrock. Building in the downtown, we're building on a swamp. Does the 200 million include that? Well, no, not according to what they say. Because if you look at it, either the contingencies are missing or the foundation work is missing. And yes, we have a head of our infrastructure group glibly stating that, well, we know, but we can address that. Sure you can. All it takes is money. Money is in short supply. Oh, well, we can get more from the taxpayers because Standard & Poor's says that the taxpayers can bear more. They're not saying that the city has more borrowing power. They're saying that the taxpayers have more money to give. Because cities do not have borrowing power. They have no assets to put on the line to pay if their debt goes out of control. That falls back on the taxpayer. So it's you, the taxpayer, that Standard & Poor's is saying can afford to pay more. And this is a lot more. So you have to consider, are you capable of meeting that a lot more for a hockey rink that you can have parties in? I don't think we are, but I may be wrong. The public decides these things, and that's where this should be. This should be with the public to decide. If the public decides that, yeah, that's acceptable, I'm absolutely willing to go along with it. But the public does need to be aware of that cost for what's being proposed. And after saying that, I don't know what else I can say. So,
well, thank you, Mr. Price. It is revealing, and of course, as we mentioned, we're open to discussing this further at any time.
with anybody.
Bye for now.